Alrighty, we are going to get started. So, first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Ara Manoogian, and I'm going to give you kind of a very brief overview of what our subjective piece discussion and analysis is about and why we came about this. So, first of all, I want to introduce our panelists. I'm going to introduce them in alphabetical order. This is not the order they're actually presenting. Actually, I'll do it in the order they're presenting. So we're going to be starting after a video presentation. We will be having the panelists in this order. We'll have Irena Varjabedian. That will be followed by Ankine Aghassian. Then we will have Vem Miller, Nanoor Shahin, and then I will be the last presenter. Following that, we'll have a brief announcement about an upcoming event, and then we will go into Q&A, which will give all participants a chance to ask any questions and make very brief comments. So it's going to be very limited, so keep your comments as short as possible if you can, and your questions as specific. And if there's a certain person that you would like to answer your question, please mention their name. We'll get in more detail when we get to Q&A on that. So, subjective piece came about following the recent attack that we had in Armenia by the Azerbaijani army on July 12th. This was followed by some protests, and I myself was involved in organizing a protest on Monday the 20th in front of the Azerbaijani Consulate General's office, and it was, at least the way that I presented it and the way it actually played out, it was a peaceful protest, and we were protesting threats being made by Azerbaijan, and you'll be seeing a video of actually what I spoke at the protest, so I'm not going to get too much detail here. But the one thing that we did have, which was quite unfortunate, was a very violent response, not only from the Azerbaijanis, but also from the Armenians. And we really felt that this issue needed to be addressed in a forum of how this affects us and what could be done in the future to maybe not have the violent responses, and also the effects of the violence on people's psyche and behavior and so on. We're going to be talking about peaceful protests. Irena Varjabedian will be doing that. She's a veteran of protests. She's been doing this for many years. She's anti-war. I've participated in many protests. Never has one ever become violent, and we've really put our points across. And then Ankine will be speaking about. Ankine is in media, and she actually is a hostess of radio shows. She's been doing that for years. She'll tell a little bit more about herself when she is presenting. And then this is going to be followed by Vem. And Vem has been in the entertainment industry for quite a number of years. He's a veteran of doing reality shows and other media stuff, and he'll be talking about social media and the power of social media and how it can be used to our advantage and in a peaceful manner, but to get the message across without the violence as much as possible. Of course, Nanoor Shahin is a behavioral specialist. She's a BCBA, and she is going to be also talking about ABA, which she'll get more into that, of how that could be used also for preventing these violence and in the future and so on. But I'll let her get into more details on that. And I'll be following up in the end with a recent publication that's actually going to be coming out soon, which is a method of bringing peace and being able to assert the cause, as we say, not just for Armenians, but for anybody on this planet has been wronged and so on. So we're going to open up right now with some videos that we're going to show you, and this is going to give some background on what's been going on, the responses, how violence affects things, how peace works, and so on and so forth. So let's roll these videos, and then that'll be followed by Irena Varjabedian in her presentation.
to our stopping their evil plan to attack Armenia. They have moved missiles into Nakhichevan, which are in range, that can strike the nuclear power plant, which would not only threaten Armenia's safety, but also the safety of Turkey, Iran, Georgia, and Azerbaijan, and the entire region, should they carry out that plan. We call on the government of Azerbaijan to stop this brutal attack on the peaceful people of the region, and especially their terrorist threats of bombing a nuclear power plant. This is not acceptable, not only in Armenia, not only in the region, but in the world. Azerbaijan has been an aggressor in this region since independence, or the collapse of the Soviet Union, and even before that. The Armenian people have staked their claims in the country of Artsakh, which, prior to Stalin's arbitrary decision to hand it over to the newly formed Azerbaijan, those lands were internationally recognized as Armenia. At the time that Stalin handed over arbitrarily these lands to the newly formed government of Azerbaijan, Stalin and the Soviet Union were not internationally recognized. For this reason, we must stand by what is internationally recognized, which means that Artsakh and territories just south of Baku all the way to the Caspian, you can find this map online, by the way, is actually Armenian territory, which has been under occupation by the Azeri government since the 1920s. For this reason, we had the Artsakh Liberation War, in which we successfully have so far liberated territories which are rightfully and internationally recognized as Armenian territories. I stand with you, and I hope that the people of the world that want peace in the world will stand by us all and demand justice, and to demand that what is right is right. I want to say one other thing. This war, these conflicts which have been going on for the last 30 years, since 1992, there has been an arms embargo that was placed by the OSCE, including the United States, Russia, France, and other countries. Azerbaijan has violated this arms embargo with the purchase of military equipment, which by the terms of the arms embargo, they should not have been able to receive. The people that have carried this out, that have sold arms to them, has been Russia, most notably Israel, in which we have shot down their drones, which have not been shot down before, 13 to begin with, and the United States. We call on those powers to stop selling arms to Azerbaijan and honor the arms embargo. For those of you that want to learn the history, the real history based on documents, I have a website, ara2020.com. If you look under experience, you will find a book that documents everything that I've said, that backs it up with official documents. Shame on Azerbaijan, shame on those that threaten us with nuclear terrorism. Shame on Azerbaijan. Yes.
What was the website? Can you say the website?
The website again is ara2020.com. Thank you.
That's the IG.
Okay, Miasin Georgian, shame on Azerbaijan.
Okay, so that was number one. I'm gonna be switching to the next one. Give me 1 second here, please. Ara, do you want to have a short conversation in middle while I'm getting ready for the second one?
Sure, we can do that really quick. So this first video that we saw, as I said, was the protest, and the highlights of this and the my whole premise was we have to keep it as peaceful as possible, but our points need to be brought across with factual information. It's always helpful because then you have less likelihood to having people basically counter you and accuse you of things. So everything that I presented, of course, is factual. It's based on historical facts, and it's based on, you know, what rights we really have to pursue these our reparations and you know, things, our land, so on and so forth.
All right. So it looks like now they have a little group going on, and they're starting to accumulate every few minutes. So wherever you Armenians are, get out here. Today's the day. We stand.
The video, as you saw, was of an Armenian girl going by and basically cussing out the Azerbaijanis and using profanity and so on. And this, of course, was videotaped by the Azerbaijanis, who are the recipients of these vulgar attack that was perpetrated on them during the protest. And so she's ready with the next one. Here we go.
Ara! Burası köpekçe bağlandı.
Ha, takip biz ya!
Abi hit arıyor. Hit arıyor.
Ha, calm down, man!
Fuck you!
Come on!
Hangi statek? Balonu hangi statek?
Why they just hit a car? Man, I get some filling it up! Some filling up! Get that
This press?
Yeah. Thank you. Հեռացող ադրբեջանցիները հարվածեցին հայ աղջիկների մեքենային, չգիտեմ ինչ է տեղի ունեցել, հիմա փորձում ենք հասկանալ, բայց դա բավականին լուրջ ազդեցություն ունեցավ նաև հայերի վրա։
And hit it with a stick of the flag, you know they stick. Okay, relax. Okay.
Bazin de. Gazal! Ճանապարհով, Gazal! Ճանապարհով գնա։
They knocked out a couple Azeris, bleeding pretty bad. Այստեղ բավականին լուրջ բախում տեղի ունեցավ ընդհանուր ու հայերի եւ ադրբեջանցիների միջև ամեն ինչ սկսվեց այնտեղից, երբ ադրբեջանցիները հարվածեցին հայ աղջիկներին ու նրանց մեքենային։
Հայերը բնականաբար չէին կարող սա անտեսել, ըստ էության մի փոքր ագրեսիվ ու երկկողմանի բավականին վտանգավոր, նաև մարմնական վնասվածքներով ընդհանուր տեղի ունեցավ։ Երեկոյան ավելի մանրամասն նկարահանումները կդիտեք, փորձենք հասկանալ, բայց ադրբեջանցիներն ամբողջությամբ հեռացան, այստեղ ադրբեջանցի կա, ես դա եմ ցույց տալիս։
Weren't you guys calling ambulance?
Fucking hell, man.
What?
Hold it.
Hold that gun!
Let's come on.
Սիրելիներս, մենք Լոս Անջելեսում ենք Վիլշեր բուլվարում, որտեղ Ադրբեջանի գլխավոր հյուպատոսությունն է, չնայած այս միջադեպը տեղի ունեցավ հյուպատոսարանից ահագին հեռու, այլ փողոցի վրա, հիմա փողոցի անունը փորձեմ նաև ինչ-որտեղ կարդալ, ադրբեջանցիները հարձակվեցին հայ աղջիկների մեքենայի վրա եւ դրանից հետո սկսվեց այս ընդհարումը։ Մարմնական վնասվածքներ միանշանակ իմ տեսախցիկը ֆիքսեց մի քանի մարմնական վնասվածքի դեպ, մենք մանրամասներ կներկայացնենք, հայկական կողմից կփորձեմ հասկանալ մարմնական վնասվածքներ ստացողներ կան թե չէ, բայց կռիվը հրահրեցին ադրբեջանցիները։ Պատասխանը միգուցե ագրեսիվ էր, բայց այս պարագայում այլ տարբերակ անհնար էր պատկերացնել, որովհետև հայերը բավականին հիմա դյուրագրգիռ վիճակում են ու պետք չէր այս սադրանքը, որը հիմա տեղի ունեցավ։ Ադրբեջանցիները, որոնք թվով շատ չէին, մոտ 30 հոգի կամ ավելի քիչ, ամբողջ բողոքի ակցիայի կեսից հեռացան տարածքից, հեռանալու ընթացքում նրանց ուղեկցում էին հայերը։ Հիմա այստեղ ինչ որ բան է կատարվում, սա էլ փորձենք հասկանալ։
Let's go! They're reading your rights, guys! Let's go back! Let's go back! Let's go! Hey, let's go! You choking in, Kev, on it!
Թե հայերից մարմնական վնասվածք ստացող կա թե ոչ դեռ չգիտեմ, ճանապարհին նաև եթե տեսնեմ անպայման փորձեմ այդ մասին եւս խոսել, բայց ադրբեջանցիների կողմից մի քանի մարմնական վնասվածքի դեպքեր կային, իրականում նույնիսկ նաև դժվար էր տարբերակել ով է հայ ով ադրբեջանցի, որովհետև երկու ամբողջները միանգամից խառնվեցին իրար։ Հիմա մենք տեսնում ենք մեր հայրենակցին։ Լավ եք։ Հիմա գտնեմ կասեմ կուղարկեն։ Ջուր! Ջուր!
Let's go this way. We need water. Right there. Fucking good, fucking
Ըստ մարմնական վնասվածքներից ոչ մի կողմը չի խուսափել, դժվար էր զերծ պահել մարդկանց եւ նույնիսկ ոստիկանական ուժերը չկարողացան կանխել այս իրավիճակը։ Բայց այնուամենայնիվ ադրբեջանցիները լքեցին տարածքը առհասարակ ամբողջ տարածքից ադրբեջանցիները հեռացան։ Այստեղ եւս վնասված մարդիկ կան։ Չեմ ուզում շատ ավելի մոտիկից նկարեմ, բայց ըստ էության մենք էլ չենք խուսափել վնասվածքներից։ Եվս մեկ անգամ նրանց համար, ովքեր շատ ավելի ուշ միացան մեզ, տեղի ունեցավ ընդհարում ադրբեջանցիների հետ Լոս Անջելեսում հյուպատոսարանի տարածքում, բայց ընդհարումը հենց հյուպատոսարանի տարածքից մի փոքր ավելի հեռու էր Գոշեն փողոցի վրա, Գոշեն Գրենվիլ հատվածում, որտեղ ադրբեջանցիները հեռանում էին եւ ընդհարում տեղի ունեցավ նրանց միջև, նրանց եւ հայերի միջև, ընդհարման սադրողը ադրբեջանցիներն էին, բայց նրանց հեռանալը եւս ուղեկցվում էր սուլոցներով։ Դժվար է առանց որևէ գնահատական տալու նկարագրությունը դուք էլ տեսաք, թե ինչ էր կատարվում։ Այս լայվի սկզբում կա այդ հատվածը, նաեւ այսօր մենք երեկոյան մանրամասն ներկայացնելու ենք ամբողջ օրվա ցուցադրությունը հորիզոնի եթերում կարող եք հետևել բոլոր մանրամասներին, ամբողջ օրվա իրադարձությունների համակարգված տարբերակը կդիտեք երեկոյան։ Իսկ հիմա
I'm just gonna switch to the next one while you're giving a short explanation.
So the short explanation of that one was it's actually a longer version of the very short one we had, as you saw, the young lady with the foul mouth, which we'll be revisiting her later on also in a future video. But this is, again, something you don't want to do when you're having a peaceful protest. You don't want to antagonize the people that you're protesting against. You want to put your point across and do it factually and do it civilly. It really goes a lot further than...
Okay, I'm ready for the one. This one is the news coverage.
Okay, let's see that.
Across the street on Wilshire Boulevard. Investigators say the two opposing groups became increasingly agitated, which turned into a physical altercation. Police are investigating 3 hate crime and battery incidents after Azerbaijani victims reported the assaults to police.
It's not just a regular assault. These are true hate crimes because these people, these Azerbaijanis, they're assaulted because of their ethnicity. So we hope that those who are responsible for this crimes will be identified and brought to justice.
The victims sustained non-life-threatening injuries and were taken to a local hospital for treatment. At least one officer was also hurt. A spokesperson for the Armenian National Committee of America says they condemn the violence that broke out, but say it was instigated by the other side.
We condemn all violence that took place at the protest on Tuesday, but our organizers took all necessary precautions and worked very closely with the LAPD to ensure that there was no escalation, and the violence that took place entirely outside of our protest.
It's a lie. They are trying to cover up the crimes they committed.
As for the international feud, a statement released by the Azerbaijani Consul General claims the Armenian army tried to attack first, forcing them to retaliate. But Armenian military officials dispute those claims.
So, as you heard, the organizer from the Armenian Youth Federation denies that they had anything to do with the violence that took place. But the reality is that when you do have a protest, you really do need to measure all those things and put safety measures in place. And I'm going to give you an example. On the Monday protest, we had people planted long before we showed up. Our protest started officially at 10 a.m. in front of the consulate. We grouped in Glendale and we drove there together. But prior to that, the day before, we scouted out the area. At 7 a.m. on Monday, we actually sent people out there and posted them at different places where problems could begin so we could contact the authorities if there was a problem and so on. And so when you have a peaceful protest, you have to really be organized. And unfortunately, sadly, the protest that took place on Tuesday in Los Angeles was not peaceful. And as you saw from the other videos, that the protesters, who some of them were young, for instance, I go back to that girl who couldn't be 16 years old, and using the F word and telling them what they're going to do to their mother and so on. That was a youth that was coming to that protest. So you can't really also deny that you have nothing to do with the violence. It comes with the territory. You have to control it. Let's hear the next video.
Եթե պետք է քար ներենք, քարավիտ ներենք, ինչպես իրենց արտոնություն գդրվի մեզի չի դրվիր, սիրելի հարնագիցներ, բայց մեղադրանք այստեղ դեսեմ, որ մեր վրա գնենք, որ դեսեք, մեր վրա գներեք, շատ գներեք, սա վտանգավոր հատկություն է սիրելիներ, որովհետև եթե մենք չանդրադառնանք, լրենք, NBC-ն, CBS-ը, CNN-ը, դեր շատ Paner bitnede մեր վրա, սա լավ հասկացեք, սիրելի հայրենիքներ։ Գներեք։ Վարգան։ Առաջինը ադիգա ուզեցիս եմ, կարևոր հատկություններ են մեկը, որ պետք է մենք ուշադրություն ունենք այս լուրերուն ոչ թե միան ծափարենք, պետք է ուշադրություն ունենք negative connotation-ը, negative բանը, որ հայերի վրա գներենք, որ թեպետև հայերը մեղավոր չէին, Ադրբեջանցիներն էին մեղավոր եւ վերջի ավորմը ձեծ կերան այդ դղերքը որ ձեզին հալալը լացեզի որ ձեզի այդպիսիները իսկապես պետք է ձեզ ուտեն այդպիսիները իսկապես ոդկի դակ պետք է առնվին հիվանդանոցները բարգին այո Պետրոսն է սողասիրա որովհետեւ սրանք մարտասպան են սիրելներ չի մոռանաք երբևս է այս նույն ադրբեջանցիները եւ որ կարորիա բادرազմ եղավ մեր զինվորին քլխադեցին չի մոռանաք սրանք ով են սիրելներ չի մոռանաք եւ այդ դղերքը որ սրանց շան լագոդի վես ոչ թե շուներուն շատ գսեմ լագոդի տակ դրին ոդկերին տակ հալալ է ցեզի գսեմ որ այս չափան լավրիկ շատ ճիշտ բաներիկ Եվ մենք պետք է ունենանք մեր փաստաբանական խումբը, որ մեր երիտասարդները, որոնք այդպիսի արարողություն կնեն ճշմարիտ, ֆեդայական, հերոսական, պետք է այսպիսիներուն պաշտպանություն ունենանք, որ սերբակալվին հանգարձակի, պետք է պաշտպանություն ունենանք։ Հայ լոյերներուն կառաջարկեմ, պետք է դուք ներկայացնեք, որ մեր երիտասարդությունը, որոնք այսօր այդ երկու աղջիկներու վրա ինչպես հարցակեցան եւ ինչպես Պանով Սարգին վերջի մեղայի եկան, մեղան չէ չի պավեր, սրանց պետք է այդ վախի տակ պահել, այս ադրբեջանցիներուն թուրքերուն աստե պետք է ոտքի տակ առնվի, սրանք միան ձեզով կհասկնան, սրանք անմագարտակ անձեց գերակ ժողովուրդ են, պետք է քավազանը իրենց գլխի վրա լա միշտ, հասկացեք ասիգասիրներ, սա իրականություն է, դա ասկային սկզբունք են գուխա, ոչ թե էքստրիմ սկզբունք են, իրենք շատերը գսեն, որ բեք չեն էինք, այսպես այնպես, թույլ դայինք, որ մեր երկու 15 տարեկան աղջիկներուն զարնեին, ձեզեին և police department-ը տիդեր ատեղը, պետք է թույլ դայինք, չէ, շատ լավրին, ոյ մեկը թող չի փորձեսել, գլսեմ, որ մի քանի հոգի գսել լավ չեղավ, ինչ գիտնամ ինչ, և ինչի համար գեցուցիկ ադրբեջանական աթրոշակը, որ գվարային, որ ինչու վրան չուր տապեցիք, ծեր թրոշակն է, վաղցակ, վադը սկացիք հանգարձակի, թող վարեին, և պետք է վարվեր, այո, ոչ թե թրոշակը պետք է վարվեր, դրանց ծեզի տակ պետք է 15 շապատ հիվանդանոց մնային, այո, ես եմ սողա ասիգա, մեր վրա գպավե խնդացին, և վերջը առանց ֆակտերի իմանալու, առանց իրականությունների իմանալու, ադրբեջանական դվյալներով, NBC-ն գել է դեղեցություն գտա, որ հայերը վրանին հարցակեցան, հասան գրին, անան գրին, բայց դեղեցությունները պետք է սրբվի սիրեներ, ով որ կազմակերպել էր այդ ցույցը, պետք է NBC-ին երասային է, եւ պետք է ճշգրտություն ունեք եւ ճիշտ ծևի սեք այս լուրը, ոչ թե կիսակադար ծևի, որ ժողովուրդը հասկանա, որ հայ ժողովուրդը առանց դաժան չէ, որ ժողովուրդը ամերիկացիները տեսնան, որ մենք արդարության համար մեր ընտանիքները բայկարելու համար ամեն ինչ կնենք, սա է հայ ժողովրդի սկզբունքը, պետք է իրենք լավ գիտենան, սիրելի հայեր։ Հիմա այս չափը գուզեմ խոսիլ Ադրբեջանի վերաբերյալ եւ նորեն գսեմ վերջի անգամ այդ տղերքը, որ հայ աղջիկներուն պաշտպանեցին երեք Ուշիրի վրայի այդ մարտահրավերական տերորիստական տեսփանարան արշիվ, որ հարցակեցան երկու աղջիկներու վրա, ցեզ Պարին փունը մասով, հբարդեմ ցեզով, շատ ճիշտ դրիկ։ Եվ բոլորին պետք է շարունակեք ձեզելը։ Սա է իրականությունը։ Սա դրանց միան ձեզ կհասնի, ուրիշ բան չհասնի։ Ձեզեք, եթե մեր վրա հարցակեցան, ոչ թե ներողություն, ոչ թե ինչ գիտնամ ինչ։ Մենք ներողություն ուշելություն, իրենք ներողություն մեզ բիդսեն։ Իրենք են մեր այրունը խմած, իրենք են մեր նահատածակ մեր նախկինները, իրենք են հանցավորները, մենք չենք սիրելներ։ Եվ սա իրականություն է, պետք է այդպես լա, և պետք է ամեն մի հայ երիտասարդ Միացյալ Նահանգներու մեջ, այլևս այդ ֆեմինիստական, գլոբալիստական, ես անուններ չեմ ուզեր տալ, այդ ուժերեն ֆեմինիստական, ես ինչ գիտնամ ինչ, մեղք ենք, մարքսիզմի հետևեն երթանք, ասոն կալ մեղք են, իրենք ալ մեզ բես չարչարված են, ոչ մեկ ծևով չեն սարսարված։ Հայ դղամարդը պետք է լա տղամարդ, հայ դղամարդը ինչպես որ ցույց տվին այդ երիտասարդները, այդպես պետք է լա։ Մեկի դեմ 10, մեկի դեմ 10,000, մեկի դեմ 100,000, այո, այդ է մեր վրեժը, ուրիշ բան չունենք այստեղը, եւ ճիշտ եղավ ալիգա։ Հիմա անցնիմ կարևոր միտքերու սիրեներ։ Տեսեք, այս ժամանակ է նախագահ Թրամփը որը մեկ ժամանակ face mask չէր տնելգոր։ Եվ հանգարձակի տեսանք 3 face mask-ի պրոպագանդա արավ։ Եվ գիտեք ինչ է, լավ հասադրեմ սիրելիներ, գիտեմ շատ մարդիկ կան, որոնք կասկածով կմոտենան որ աս հարցին, եւ կգասկածին որ նախագահ այս կամ այդ է խաղեր կխաղա, որ դուք լման սխալած եք սիրելիներ։ Դերեկություններ կան, Patriot-ները շատ դերեկություններ ունեն, ինչ կդառնա որ դուք շատ կասկածամիտ եք, հանկիստ տեղերնիդ նստեցեք, մի խառնվեք, եթե չեք հավատար որ, թողեք մարդիկ իրենց գործը ունեն։ Սա պայքար է սիրելիներ։
I'm sorry, this one was my fault. I just had to stop it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for stopping it. As you can see, I have to introduce Bedros Hadjan, who is in the video. He's a PhD holder in theology. He's a chaplain. he is calling for hate. He is I mean, the things that he's saying, and people listen to him because he is a figure in the community. And this is what we don't want. You know, there were the mention of it's good, they should have beat them up. It even goes, this video goes on further. It will be in the final edit, but it's hard to watch, but we have to understand that this is what we don't want to do. This is exactly what we want to do. And what he's calling for is hate crimes. And that's what we're being accused of. The Armenian community or the people that perpetrated it. It's not, you know, we can't say everybody is guilty of that and that represents us. No, the people that did these hate crimes don't represent me. They don't represent most people. And this is a real problem. And this is really why we're having this subjective piece, is because for Bedros and people like him, this is peace. That's their form of peace. It's not peace. And as you hear, he says these Azerbaijanis, they're murderers. What they did during the April 2016 war, you know, we have to go after them here. Well, that's not, the people here are not soldiers, and this isn't the battlefield. Yes, things happen during war, atrocities happen during war, but that doesn't represent who we are. There have been many atrocities that the Armenians have carried out against the Azerbaijanis, or even during the Armenian genocide in defense. Things happened. It wasn't me. I wouldn't, you know, it's not my thing. So this is something that we wanted to show, to understand that there are elements in our community and in other communities. The Azeris have the same thing, that people are calling for violence. People are calling for this type of thing. And it talked about the two girls. You're going to see how that played out later on, because the two girls are the ones that really were the trigger. That girl with the foul mouth, she was really the trigger for the violence that took place at this the Tuesday, July 21st protest at the end. So let's move on to the next video, and let's see what that is.
Ara, we need to explain each video a little bit more in detail, because there are people who cannot hear it, and I understand we're going to present that later in the final version, but I just want to make sure that every participant can actually get as much information as possible at this point. Well, now we're going to be moving to some results of what happened after this special protest in every other place pretty much in the world. So we're having this.
Yeah, this is what the trigger was. So here we're looking at a video of an Azerbaijani who is being attacked by Armenians and getting watermelons thrown on him. And that was in Russia.
Russia.
Yes.
It was really interesting. I have to say this. It was really interesting because when first time I was watching this specific video, I was thinking, does this specific individual who is being attacked, does he really know even on the map where is Armenia and where is even Turkey? I'm not really honestly sure about that. He's just a guy who is just, you know, selling watermelon. But it was the first thing that came in my mind, that you're attacking somebody who may not even know this whole process. All right, if you take over just for a second, I will be ready.
Okay.
Very shortly.
Yeah, so the videos that are going to follow are what happened after the 21st and the violence against Armenians by Azerbaijanis, the violence against Azerbaijanis by Armenians, and so on. Here's another one. These Armenians attacking two Azerbaijanis. This guy got thrown in a lake, and this guy got beaten up quite badly, almost Rodney King style. Or I should say, not Rodney King style. Yeah, like Rodney King style. They were kicking him around, hitting him. And at some point, an Armenian kind of felt sorry for him and lets him go, sends him on his way, and you'll see that now. So here's that Armenian, stops the other one from beating him up, sends him on his way, and there he goes. And he's saying, Davai, go. And they attack him again and start kicking him. And these are the Armenians against this one lone Azerbaijani. Is this a hate crime? Of course it is. So, and now here's another. Now this is where kind of the tables turn, I think. This was what happened to Armenians being attacked by Azerbaijanis. So it's this back and forth thing, and these are all things that follow. This is a cafe, again in Moscow. Azerbaijanis come in, that's an Armenian guy. And they come in to fight, and they're throwing things around. And the Armenian comes out with a bat and starts beating them off. So these Azerbaijanis come back to get their buddy because their buddy is now getting beaten up. And the Azeris had enough, and the Armenians keep beating away because they have nowhere else to go. It's their cafe, and that's how that ended.
Just so everybody is aware, we have only three more short videos, and then we'll be continuing with the short presentations. So the next one is actually the attack in Boston.
Okay.
Kimsenin var yok buna.
Our talk is Armenia.
Our talk is Armenia. Our talk is Armenia. Armenia wants peace. 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 Armenia.
So that was actually, as you saw, the Azeris were disrupting an Armenian protest. And fortunately, the Armenians didn't fight back. They just used, and you saw the police there. So that was actually a well-handled situation, in my opinion. That's how you do it. You don't engage in violence, even when there's violence coming. And this is in San Francisco, that many of you heard. It's an Armenian school, and it was vandalized by, we believe, Azerbaijanis. I mean, the paint on the wall indicates that, but there's no, I was told there's video surveillance there. I haven't seen it yet. But this is another hate crime towards Armenians, allegedly by Azerbaijanis. But again, you know, we haven't seen the actual people that did it. So anybody could have done it to rile things up too. That's not beyond from people doing that. And lastly, we go to Canada. I think that's the last video, Canada.
That's correct. If you give me just 1 second, I'm almost there.
Now, this is very important. No matter what they say to you, we do not engage in violence. We are here maintaining our position. I want to make you abundantly clear.
Oh my goodness.
We are here peacefully.
Armenia! 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 Armenia!
Amca Haliler, Sedat sikerim sen, Behdini sikerim ben götürene bak. Amına soktum araba.
Everyone, please, our group, please come back here immediately. Do not engage in anything.
Don't put your head, I cut your head. I cut Heru. Heru. Cut your head. Heru. I cut your head. I cut your head. Heru. I cut your head. Heru. You stop putting your hands up. Heru, get up. Heru, get up. I cut your head, fucking guys. Don't fuck around with us. Don't fuck with us. Yedem! Yedem! I'm Canadian too, so what? You don't want to be like that. You cannot go away. There is freedom. You come to fight with us. We are peaceful. It's okay. Back. You have to go back. What do you want, huh? Get the hell out of here. We are protesting. Yeah, no, back up. How old are you? Go back to your place. Okay. How old are you?
What?
Okay, and that was our last video. I'm not going to comment on that, but that was a peaceful protest, and that's really how you do it, especially when there's a counter-protest going on. You hold your ground, but you don't engage in violence, and you even announce it, as the gentleman that was one of the organizers apparently. We're going to now move on to Irena Varjabedian, who is going to talk about peaceful protests. Irena?
Yes, hi, my name is Irena Varjabedian, and I've been a peace activist since the start of the Iraq war. You know, there were protests all over the world, and right before the Iraq war, people trying to stop the war, and I just got so mad, you know, with all the lies and what's going on. So I just got involved. You know, when you're so mad, you want to do something. It's just a way to show that, you know, you care, and to show it's just a way to give out your anger. You know, instead of going and hitting somebody, it's much better to go protest with a group of people. You know, then you get more relieved, you know, with your anger. Anyways, I've been involved with many protests since then, and I'm still trying to be active, not as much as before. And I'm very disturbed about all this violence and hate speech. It really bothered me. And I'm very upset also that the Armenian media is not showing both sides. So this is very disturbing, because all I've been seeing in the Armenian media that the Turks did that, the Turks did that. They're not showing what the Armenians are doing. Anyway, I haven't prepared anything to speak, because when Nanoor asked me last week, I wasn't feeling well. I was very sick. But the last minute, I just have to, you know, bring up some points. first I want to clarify that we have to make a distinction between protests and war between two countries. Because I've been seeing on the social media where somebody says, oh, we have to do this peacefully, and people are attacking them and telling them, oh, no, if they want to start war, you want us to, to conquer them with peace. We're not talking about what's happening between the two countries, during at the border or with wartime. We're talking about the protests. So I want to make this a big distinction. So coming to protests, as I said, calling out names, using bad language, screaming, hitting, it's just going to be a vicious cycle. Violence perpetrates violence. Nobody's going to be happy if somebody's calling their names, or it's just, you just don't get anywhere. I know it from my own experience. When I first started protesting, I used to be more mad. Sometimes I used to scream at people, but after many years of experience, I realized that that's not the right way to do it. You're just not going to get anywhere. You scream, they scream, you scream, they scream. Everybody's mad. Nothing is accomplished. So it's just much better off not to use, bad language. Calling out names is the worst thing. And, if somebody starts, if the other side starts calling you bad names, making you mad, the best thing is just to shine it off and just ignore it. That's the best thing. You're not going to get anywhere if you start insulting them back or going and attacking them. Just no outcome, zero outcome from that. And if this continues, somebody's going to get killed, somebody's going to get hurt, somebody's going to be hospitalized. That's the end of violence. I mean, it's just really bad. Other than that, let me see, I made some points. Yes, also, as I said, the media is extremely important that they show both sides. So I'm upset at the Armenian media at this point, very upset. I didn't know that those guys who went and attacked the girls in the car, that the girls instigated something, because the Armenian media didn't show that part. But it doesn't mean that Azeris cannot start it. Of course, Azeris can start it too. But why should you be the first one who starts it? Why should you? I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying, just don't start anything that instigates anger or hate or, whatever. So the media is very important. One side is not better than the other side. Everybody's human. And we also have to take into consideration that everybody's reality is different. My reality is different than what the young Azeri knows. All they know is that Armenians started a war and they occupied their country, Karabakh. That's all they know. You don't blame them. It's the governments, the politicians who constantly have lies and propaganda. So by screaming at them, if they're mad at you that we occupied their country, and you scream back to them, Artsakh is Armenia, they're not going to understand anything. Do you think they're going to say, oh yeah, this is your land? No, this was my land. You guys came and took it over. So by knowing the truth, why these guys are mad at us, then it makes it easier to, to analyze or to approach them, in a different way. If you can make friends with them on Facebook, try to show them some historical facts. That's just the only way. It's just like, because they don't know, their government has lied to them that the Armenians came and occupied Karabakh. And I think this is the worst thing, because that's all I hear from Azeris. The government, the young people, everybody says, you guys, this is occupied land by Armenia. So this is something extremely basic. We have to expose the facts, you know, have dialogues, have forums. Because it's just like, you know, first have the facts and then let's solve the problem. You cannot just start from top, you know, there's hatred, and then you have to analyze why there's hatred, why there is animosity. You have to analyze it. So I think this is something very, very important. Even our leaders are not taking this seriously. Let's just sit down, have a talk about historic facts. What can we do? There were mistakes made. Stalin gave them the land. Let's see what we can do right now, you know. So other than that, people like, I don't want to say like, you know, Bedros or other people on social media, it just makes me very sad. They are instigating conflict and violence. It just makes me very, very sad. And I hope, you know, one day he realizes this is not the right way. And unfortunately, many people follow him. I mean, this is like, this is very disturbing. They love the way he talks, the hate speech. They just love it. He incites it. He just makes them more excited to, you know, to hate the Azeri or the Turk or whatever. Anyway, so the last thing I'm going to say is we really have to learn how to build up a movement. You know, we have to be more organized and attract more Armenians to our group, you know, to our peaceful group. We have to work hard on it. And also, you know, I want to end this by saying that when I was much younger, I was so scared meeting a Turk. I was just horrified. And, you know, eventually when you get older, you just realize, hey, what can I do about this? You know, I don't want to live like this forever, being scared from somebody. So I started making friends with them on Facebook. And believe me, it opened up a big, you know, it just opened up a huge door and future for me. It just was a different experience becoming friends with them. Of course, not all of them, you know, are nice, but, you know, there are many people, it's just a small thing, they can block you. But believe me, the majority are not like that. If you know how to talk to them, you're not going to be friends with somebody and your first conversation is going to say, yes, you guys killed us. You know, this is, you know, there is a genocide, accept it right now. You're not going to make friends with somebody like that. It's just the way to talk to people. You know, you can just start talking by other things. You don't have to talk about the genocide from day one. You can start talking about other things, about culture, about, you know, I visited Turkey, hey, you know, blah, blah, blah. Or my father was born in Marash. So that's just the way to start a conversation. And that just works much better. It's just, there was this one guy that I met, you know, a few months ago, just like maybe 1 month before April 24th. And he seemed like a very nice guy. And he said, I have lots of Armenian friends. I love your culture. So, I mean, I really like to talk to him. And then when April 24th came, there were some, you know, discussions and conflicts. And I was very, very careful not to say something harsh. But I guess somebody else in my friend group, they upset him. And he just blocked me. And I was devastated because I loved talking to this guy, even though he said, no, we didn't do the genocide, but I loved talking to him. Eventually, a few days later, you know, through another friend, I was just sending him some music videos, cultural stuff. And then, you know, he friended me again. He said, oh, forget about it, forget about it. I said, listen, we don't have to talk about politics. We don't have to. Let's just be friends. So, you know, once in a while he sends me something political and I know how to respond to him without upsetting him, and then once in a while I send him something. So that's how I'm going to end it. Thanks for having this forum.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi, my name is Vem, and my background's mostly been in production and marketing and PR, and really just kind of image creation, I guess, is part of what I do. So yeah, my background is really about how to represent different issues and causes in the most palatable way, where you can gain the largest audience possible by, you know, making strategic choices.
It's funny because like I don't know, this is all like flashback kind of material for me because like those you know, your Armenian thugs running down the road right there was almost like a flashback out of the early 90s when I was growing up, you know? And it's sad that that's still going on because I'll tell you, when I was growing up, you know, even though I loved all my Armenian friends, and funny enough, even looking at that video, there's some guys that I know that were there, you know, running after the crowd, and you know, it seemed like they were trying to do the right thing. They were being mature about it because, you know, these are guys I grew up with back in the 80s and 90s that, you know, were experienced a lot of the violence that was happening back then. But to be honest with you, I thought this stuff had stopped once the 2000s came along. I didn't know there was still those kind of scenes, because that video that I saw was literally every week I would see that growing up with something, whether it's like Armenians fighting Turks or Armenians getting into fights at, you know, bars and clubs and parties and all that stuff. And it was just this tendency for violence that, you know, while I love the community, it was definitely something that was a turnoff because it doesn't make us look good at all. I mean, visually, it looks like the ugliest thing you could ever imagine. A bunch of hairy, foreign-looking guys. I mean, we're all Armenians, but like from the outside, if you step away and you look at it from a media perspective, it looks like a bunch of hairy, foreign-looking guys getting into violence. And it kind of helps that the other side also looks like they're hairy and foreign because it kind of makes it an outside issue. And I don't think Americans necessarily will be like, oh my God, those, I mean, it's like everybody looks like thugs in that. But as Armenians, we shouldn't. And I don't know what it is. It's like still the same problem it was back then, that in Los Angeles, for some reason, this happens more, whereas I find the Armenians in Boston, elsewhere, a little bit more mature. Like you don't have the tendency for violence. And it was almost like the same thing I think I witnessed in these videos, you know? I mean, what's really important, I think my 2 cents is this is a failure of leadership, to be honest with you, because even before going into these protests, there has to be an agenda. You know, it's like when you look at like the history of protests, you know, you see Black Lives Matter, for example, where people are tearing stuff up, and that creates a little bit of division in the people's point of view about what that is. But then you see disciplined protests like Martin Luther King, and to be honest with you, even Nation of Islam, where you see all those guys standing up straight and acting respectful. And you get away with that. You get away with gaining respect from people by having a sense of discipline and not resorting to violence. And, you know, I think where we're lacking is our ability to tell the story. And I don't know how you do this. I don't know how you encourage leaders to get the youth under control and explain to them that the best thing we could do is explain our story of what happened, how this is affecting us, why this topic makes us angry, why it makes us, you know, why it affects us until today. Why are we even here in Los Angeles? You know what I mean? Like, these are the things that I feel like we have to tell our stories. And I think a great example of how telling your story has worked through time, and it's the best way to achieve what you want, is really, you know, you got to look at the Jewish community. And what they've done is, you know, you never see these kind of scenes in the Jewish community where people are losing their cool. And I mean, the minute you lose your cool, you've already lost it. It doesn't matter what the topic is. You know, that could have been a Holocaust march, and if it was a bunch of Jews attacking, you know, Nazis, they're the ones that are going to look bad. You know what I mean? It's like, even though the Nazis were the ones that did the bad stuff to the Jews, if the Jews attacked Nazis on the street like that, they would look bad. But, you know, they don't do that because they're much more organized. They go in with an agenda. And I think the smartest thing we could do with these types of protests is obviously peaceful protests, but beyond that, documenting and telling our story. Now, when it comes to documenting all those people running around and acting like fools, if they just held their cameras up and pointed it at the opposition, you're going to get a lot of juicy footage about what the opposition is doing. Now, our side was acting so stupid that all the cameras were on them, you know, but if you just act disciplined and point the cameras to where they're, so now you see what the other side is doing. And so back when I was going to Washington, D.C. to do, you know, help out with, you know, just protests and going to Capitol Hill. I mean, I've done a lot of things like that. We're interviewing different political figures, going to, you know, protests and that sort of thing. I mean, it's just felt a lot more organized and a lot more disciplined and a lot more agenda driven. And those protests seem to work a lot better. But what I would add to that is just this idea, we're in the social media world right now. We're in the world of content. Like, it's really important for our side just to document what's happening on the other side. Point your camera on the other side. Just like when I went to Washington, D.C. in the past, and our group was being so, like, civilized that the only thing I could do is point the cameras on the Turkish side. And when you point the cameras on the Turkish side and they're saying things like, fuck your mother, this, that, that's great material. That's, like, exactly what we want. And that's very easy to get if you're just kind of a little bit more, like, less emotional and more about documenting what's happening. And really being two things. The two big words are documenting and telling your story against whatever, and just never ever losing your cool. And I don't know how you convey that to the community, and I don't know how you convey it to guys like this. I don't know how you control something like this, but it's I think it's, you know, the failure of leadership not to teach. You know, this is like a very basic thing. Like, even when the Azeris protest, and I see this on the Turkish side, there's organization, there's an agenda. They've talked about it. They said, okay, we're going to go in here, we're going to be like as disciplined as, you know, as we can be, and this is what we're going to say, you know, whereas our side just kind of goes in there and, like, Kentibes, like, one person saying this, one person saying that, there's a zillion agendas, temperaments, whatever. There's just no unified goal. And the unified goal should be, like, people need to hear our story. We need to be a lot more media savvy by telling our people. If we invest all that anger and energy into, like, just telling people our story, making sure we're contacting the media with our story, you know, and I'm not talking about, like, leaders. I'm talking about, like, that 15-year-old, rather than saying, you know, F your mother, she could have been like, let me call NBC and explain why I'm here and what this is affecting us. Believe it or not, you do things like that enough, the media they need stories. The media needs stories. So the story is either going to be, look at the Armenians, they're doing hate crimes, or the story is going to be, you know, look at this 15-year-old. She's so affected by what happened to her ancestors, she's still here protesting. And that becomes a lot more endearing of a story to tell than anything else that happened there. So I guess that's my, you know, 2 cents on how to approach all this stuff, to just put a better face to the community at large, and, you know, really seem like, you know, not the bad guys, because we're not, but, you know, with this kind of behavior, it just makes us look a little foolish, you know?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, ma'am. All right. Yeah. So now we're going to move on to Ankine. Ankine, you're on.
So my name is Ankine Aghassian. I am with 2 shows. I'm with the Scholar Circle radio show. It's a radio show and a podcast, and that one is syndicated, and it's played on many stations around the United States and in New Zealand. And also I'm with another show called the Swana Region Radio, where we look at South and West Asia and North Africa, regional issues, cultural, political, environmental issues in those regions. And I would be talking about how we use this media as a way of creating peace. So I will use the example of the shows to illustrate how media can be used to create peace, and then look briefly at social media. So on the Scholar Circle, we bring scholarship to the public. We bridge that gap. And my colleague Maria and I are descendants of the genocide survivors, and I think that drives our interest in understanding conflict and genocides and in creating peace. How do we use the media to promote peace? So we have extensively covered genocides, massacres, war, hate speech, dehumanization, and other types of conflict, and also peaceful societies, bystanders. We also look at connecting with this protest. What I see there is the us and them, the othering, the groupthink, the bystanders, And we also, we basically look at the root causes of conflict and how to build peace. We start with the question, I think for me it all starts with the question of who is human nature, and there's disagreement on this amongst scholars. Without understanding who we are, how do we determine why we do the things we do? Why do we dehumanize? Why do we organize genocides? There are the political and geopolitical answers, but they are not sufficient. For example, it does not explain why tens of thousands of people follow their leaders, take arms, and kill members of the other group, and members of whom could be their friends and relatives. So we look at the individual within the context of the system, and we look at the system as well as look at the collective. We have guests such as the preeminent psychologist Philip Zimbardo on, who's famed for the Stanford prison experiments, who looks at the system. I recommend his book highly. It's called The Lucifer Effect. He says it is the system, as social psychologists do, and he says you become the uniform that you wear. We have interviewed many times the most important scholar on dehumanization, David Livingstone Smith. Without understanding dehumanization, we cannot understand conflict, atrocities, or racism, or the Holocaust. I mean, without truly understanding dehumanization, not the way it is loosely used. This book, by the way, recommending a lot of books here, is called On Dehumanization by David Livingstone Smith. I think everyone should read that book. And we have had many discussions with the archaeologist Doug Fry, who along with other archaeologists have concluded that humans have always had peaceful societies. We always hear of humans as having had warring societies, but in his book Beyond War, The Human Potential for Peace, he gives examples of peaceful societies now and the past. We have spoken with Jason Stanley about his book, How Propaganda Works, which came out a few years ago, right on time for the current administration. And in relation to the videos we're watching, we look at, as I said before, us and them, the other, the group thing. It is important to note also, very important to note, that dehumanizing the perpetrator is as dangerous as dehumanizing the minorities, the other group, the victims. Just think about this as us dehumanizing the Turks, always calling them beasts. They're like, like Bayrak dogs, and so if tomorrow the order is given to go and attack them, we will attack them and kill them because they're not human. So keep that in mind about dehumanizing. And I think you're saying some of that in that video, in the videos too. So we all, and the other thing to always keep in mind is what I've learned from all these years of doing this is that we all have the potential to become the perpetrator. And if we don't understand that, that becomes dangerous. Because the moment you understand that, you become aware. And when you become aware, you will do whatever it takes not to be the perpetrator. So this is how we use the media as a tool to create peace, because we also look at models of creating peace. We don't just look at the problems. We look at what is working and what is not. And so let's see. And how many minutes do I have? Because I have a few more things to say.
You're good.
Go ahead, you're good.
Yeah, you can continue. This is really important and interesting. We can do over 9. There is no limit for our Zoom meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
So we hope that when we are teaching listeners about dehumanization, we are raising awareness, and listeners will be careful about what words they use in regards to other groups. We hope listeners will pay attention, will pay close attention to what words leaders use to describe groups, to their dehumanizing rhetoric and the dangers of it. We hope they will be able to spot a leader's authoritarian tendencies. We also hope they will take action to create peace. I want to give a couple of examples of how the media has been used for good and bad. Very briefly, in Rwanda, the Hutu government used a radio station to disseminate hate propaganda and prepare the public for the coming violence. The Hutus dehumanized the Tutsis for a long time before the genocide. They called them cockroaches and all kinds of vermins. They mobilized ordinary Hutus and gave them directions on the radio on how to carry out the genocide. It's very, gives me chills whenever I think about this case, because the moment they gave orders on the radio, everybody went out and killed because they were already prepared through this propaganda. They were already prepared to do it. The government prepared them, basically. In Myanmar, the military carried a systemic campaign on Facebook to prepare its public for the ethnic cleansing of the Rohingya population. They used pages like news pages, fake news pages, pop star news pages to attract followers. And once they would get a large numbers of followers, then they put inflammatory and false news on these pages, and they dehumanized and incited the Myanmar population long enough and strongly enough that when they did start the ethnic cleansing, nobody was going to defend the Rohingyas. So now, so they use social media. Now, social media, let me mention one good thing before I go on a little bit more about the social media. The female genital mutilation. There's been many campaigns, there are effective campaigns of anti-female genital mutilation. And there's also been many programs where radio has been used to bring together groups that were in conflict. Now, it's not just the government, and it's not just those in authority in the states who are using social media. The way they're using it, it becomes problematic. The problem's also with us. Two issues. One, anyone can start a news page. Anyone can start a website. Anybody can make videos and put it on Facebook or other social media. And then that's shared a million times. Never mind that it probably contains false information, misinformation, hateful information. And the question of who is even this person in this video making claims is not asked. It's repeated by the time we try to bring it under control and try to give the correct information on that topic. It's too late. It's never done. And it doesn't help that our leader has misused the term fake news and have given it a whole new meaning. And fake news is not what he says it is. On that, some other time. Independent, open, pluralistic, egalitarian media should be a place of greater communication that can increase awareness, a place where people come with questions and find answers, a place of understanding, solving conflict. Social media is supposed to be like the public square of the past, where people gather to dialogue. The public square was a place where public discourse took place. Instead, social media has become a place of fueling arguments, inflammatory language, inciting posts, hateful comments. There isn't much dialogue, and I wouldn't call what happens there public discourse. Dialogue, if any, is in between those of the same convictions, so it becomes an echo chamber. So the problems with social media abound, but the question for today is, how do we use it to create peace? It's complex, and we can spend several hours on it, but maybe we can start with us, by putting aside arrogant self-confidence. I will repeat that because this gets me more than anything. Arrogant self-confidence. The I know. And come to the table with Socrates approach, you got that, of not knowing. This is I know that I don't know anything. We can come to the table with humility, with I am here to learn attitude, learn and listen and have empathy. Take a pause before posting or commenting. We should think, if I was not reacting, what would I say? So stop for a second and think about that. We should also be aware of what words we use and how we use them. Remember that there's no non-verbal communication on social media. So all that matters are your words and how to use them. There's more at stake than losing a friend over an argument with what's going on social media. There's a big gap between what we're doing with the media we're producing and the number of hours we put, the research that we do, the thoughtfulness, the endless hours of researching the guests' work, the guests that we find. Big gap between that and the social media, and we don't know how to get people to listen to us because they're long, in-depth conversations that you need to spend an hour on. My last sentences are: we should always be asking ourselves, am I creating peace or conflict? That's the question we ask ourselves for the media that we create. We will never create anything that creates conflict. I can honestly say 14 years I've done this, never done that. That should always be the question. Am I creating peace or conflict? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ankine. That was fabulous.
That was awesome.
Yeah. Okay, Nanoor, you're up next.
Okay, thank you. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Nanoor Shahin. I'm a board-certified behavior analyst, and English is my fourth language. It was my understanding at the beginning that we're going to do this in Armenian, so I was more excited about talking in Armenian, but I'm going to keep the English as much as I can. So just a very short background before I move to my short presentation. So in 2016, end of 2016, I started becoming a little bit more active in the Los Angeles area. I was born in Iran. I moved to Armenia, and I specifically lived in Artsakh for a couple of years, back and forth. And Artsakh, the concept of Artsakh is very personal to me. Shushi is my most favorite home. I still call it home. Anyways, in 2016, end of 2016, beginning of 2017, I become a little bit more active. Actually, that's when I met Ara and Irena during the protests. And I end up doing a couple of other protests, with a smaller group of people. All of them have been very peaceful. And just when all of this started at a couple of days ago, actually a week ago, I was contacted with lots of my friends on the Facebook. And they were kind of upset with me. They're saying that you have been very active in past, now you're no longer active, what's going on? You're not posting anything on social media. You're not as excited about Armenia anymore. And I had to go and explain to each and every one of them separately that that's not the case. Armenian, my love and care and respect and, everything, my enthusiasm about Armenia and Artsakh is never less. I just learned that there is so many other things that we have to do. And as I mentioned, I'm a board-certified behavior analyst, and I spent so much energy, time to learn the science of behavior analysis. And I was trying to have this personal conversation with different people and explain to them that what really behavior analysis is. There is misunderstanding. Lots of people think that behavior analysis is the only therapy system that works for individuals with autism or other developmental disorder. As I already said, that's not necessarily true. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can make this work a little bit differently. Okay. So speaking of behavior analysis, it's just a science, just like every other science. And it's a science that studies the behavior of human beings. We just happen to be more successful when you're working with individuals with autism and other developmental disorder. And just because there is money there, everybody does that. It's always been my passion to introduce ABA to other fields, including politics. And, when all of this was happening, I started thinking how we can use behavior analysis to evaluate the situation and possibly bring some awareness about what we can do to change the behavior of whoever is, creating that violence, aggression, and how we can use this to promote more of the peace. And that was the first conversation that I had with Ara, and we kind of come up with this concept. So it's not that I'm less active, I'm just changing my way of promoting all of this. So behavior analysis is gonna be targeting, we always have a target behavior when we're talking about behavior analyzers. I'm so sorry, give me a second. Oops, that was really fast. Okay. So speaking of target behavior, for the purpose of this discussion, the target behaviors that we can talk about is aggression, violence, and peace. So these are the three things that I think lots of people are confused about. During this protest, the short videos that we see, lots of individuals with their behavior, they engaged in aggression and violence while they were trying to create peace in their own definition of peace, right? That's why we call this presentation subjective peace, because the operational definition of is very different. What is the operational definition? So operational definition is when we are specifying in the most clear way what is something. So if we're talking about violence, if we're talking about aggression, if we're talking about hate, we have to operationally define each of them. So the big question here was that what is the operational definition of peace for every individual? As Irena mentioned, it is really sad that people like Pedros, who has lots of followers, does a lot of live broadcasts on Facebook and other social media, his definition of peace was very different from what I believe and we believe in peace is. So in applied behavior analysis that studies the behavior, we say that it's very confusing if we don't have a clear operational definition of a concept. In this case, I think we don't have a clear operational definition of peace. So going back, these are some results that we already saw and we discussed. This is the individual who was beaten by Armenians, regardless of who started that. We clearly, as Armenians, we engaged in it. And as a result, this is what we get. And after that, lots of Armenians have been attacked in different places of the world. So those are the consequences that we got because of our behavior, right? So in behavior analysis, there are four main functions for behavior. So when we're asking why the individual engaged in this specific behavior, there are four functions. The first one is self-stimulatory. Clearly, it's not relevant in our case. Then we have escape or task avoidance. Then we have attention. And the last one is tangible. In this case, what we are doing right now by using social media inappropriately and by promoting lots of confusing information, we're actually redirecting the attention to the wrong direction. We are actually providing a lot of attention to aggression and violence. I was just following a couple of these very aggressive videos, and it was unbelievable how many times Armenians are sharing it. So literally in an hour, the number of shares by Armenians, it was so much that I was like, why we are even promoting this? Why we are giving so much attention to this side of the story? We think we're doing something good to us. We think this is beneficial, but in reality, we are serving the function of attention to the other side. And that's really huge. The other thing is the other side, by giving us a lot of reasons, they're avoiding the concept of dealing with the reality. So because we are now having, besides talking about what really is happening on the border of Armenia, now we have to deal, and get busy with what happened in an Armenian school in San Francisco, who was hit in Boston. So they're really escaping this whole concept, and we are giving in, we're playing their game. We really need to stay focused on the topic. We really need to have an operational definition of what is our activism for, and what are we serving by doing every single action. We have to be responsible for our own behavior and not serve this concept of attention and avoid from the other side. So obviously, every problem behavior or socially undesirable behavior, in this case, violence and aggression, we need to have a replacement behavior for it. The replacement behavior that we should select needs to be functionally equivalent, meaning that it needs to serve the same function. So if they are working on attention and task avoidance, we have to also work on attention, but with a replacement behavior that is socially more appropriate. in this case, our solution is peace. We really need to promote more of a peace rather than playing that violence game. So here's are some very nice examples of Armenians actually promoting peace. So that was, you know, although we saw a lot of videos that were really aggressive, I was very happy to see that at least some of, you know, our Armenians are trying to find other peaceful way of dealing with the situation. So it's just an example of replacement behavior that they selected. And I think it's a perfect replacement behavior. And here, I really wanted us to kind of analyze these two pictures. So here there is a woman who says Mexicans stand with Armenia. That if you look at it from the first point of, I mean, immediately you feel that this is a very peaceful thing, right? We have to be happy, you know, they are supporting us. But then the way that we titled this says against Azerbaijani terrorism. Why even we had to introduce the violence and terrorism in this picture? This is such a beautiful, peaceful picture. There was absolutely no need to include that. So sometimes we do have a great replacement behavior that we're literally ruining it by putting extra comments, by titling it wrongly. I would be more than happy to just share this without any comment on it, right? So we really have to be very careful, as also Ankine mentioned, the words that we are using, right? We can change something very peaceful to something really aggressive. On the other picture, this is actually, obviously, I had to cover the names because of the confidentiality. I'm very careful with that concept. But this is from a 19 years old, 20 years old young man that I know, actually. And the last couple of weeks, he has been extremely aggressive. Just posting everything that is very hate related, that, oh, I'm gonna do a kill, we're gonna kill you, you're gonna be answering for all of this. And when you talk to this individual, because I had that like private personal conversation with this individual, he doesn't really know what is the plan. He has absolutely no plan. He's just being excited with this whole situation. We call that behavior momentum. He's just in the middle of this momentum, and because of the lack of life experiences and just experiencing about how the concept of behavior, reaction, and all of that works, he's just excited and he's just posting things. Well, honestly, I'm really worried about him because, you know, it's not like only he sees that. He's posting things that on social media and everybody else can see it, and he might have consequences because of his behavior of sharing these things. So my point is that lots of times we just share things, we engage in a behavior that we're not really taking full responsibility for it. So I'm just going to end my presentation with this quote, that darkness cannot drive out darkness, and only love and peace can do that. Love and light, actually. I strongly believe that there is a lot we can do. This is not the time that in diaspora we have to fight and, you know, have a war in diaspora. There is so much we can do. We can educate people. We can do professional, you know, seminars and teach them how to be peaceful. You know, this is not the place or the time to engage in violence and aggression. We're not going to win this in this system. We cannot win a situation in 2020, in 21st century, using methods that has been used like 20, 30 years ago. There is a lot we can actually use today as a replacement behavior instead of engaging in aggressive actions. So that was my point. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that was somehow helpful.
All righty. Thank you, Nanoor. It was wonderful. So now the final presentation for today I will be making. And I'm going to be kind of trying to wrap things up and encompass all that was said by the presenters today. So let me first introduce myself for those that don't know. My name is Ara Manoogian. I was born in Pasadena, California, and I've been involved in Armenian revolutionary activities and human rights issues and so on since I was a child. I was born into a family of revolutionaries from both sides, in fact. My grandfather on my father's side was an officer in the Tsar's army, and he left Armenia, the city of Dilijan, in 1915 to defend the Armenians of the city of Erzurum, and then he would later go to Van, where he would take caravans of Armenians. This was in the final days of Van, basically, the defense, and then taking caravans to Iran, later marrying one of the women who was widowed by the genocide, who had two sons, and he would later move to Iraq, move the whole family to Iraq, where my father was born. And on the other side, that people know more about me, is my grandfather was Shahan Natali, and he was a revolutionary. He was an orphan child of the Hamidian massacres in 1895, October of 1895. And he would later on grow up and become the organizer and mastermind behind the assassinations of the quote-unquote Turks who were behind the Armenian genocide. And recently, in the last 2 years, I've actually co-authored a book which uses materials that I inherited, my mother and I inherited from my grandfather, Shahan. And I was raised pretty much, he was my mentor since I was a child. And, you know, he passed away when I was 16 years old. So he definitely left his impression and left his mark and left his desires and expectations of what he wanted from me to do, to carry on the work that he started back at the turn of the 20th century. So I grew up in the United States. I moved to Artsakh during the toughest times. I was there during the war. I didn't participate as a fighter during the war, I have to tell you. I was there more as an observer. It was very short because the war ended very quickly after I actually went over there. I was there in 1993, and it was the last year of the war. So I saw very little of the action, which I'm just fine by. But what I did do was I observed the problems that were there. So I became a human rights activist. I moved there full time, took on government corruption specifically because I was allowed to, because my grandfather was revered by the military. In fact, he wrote a book called Turkeri of Menk, The Turks and Us, which was basically the field manual for the army on how to deal with the Turks. And everybody that was an officer had read this book. It was standard reading material to understand who the Turks are and how to deal with them. So I was very well treated, and it gave me the opportunity to defend the rights of the common people in Artsakh, in Armenia. Dealt with a lot of issues. I'm not going to get into all that right now for the sake of time. Long story short, I moved back here in 2006 due to different circumstances. And as I said 2 years ago, I co-authored a book called Betrayal, the Promise Never Kept, Genocide in the West Secret War on Oil. It's available online. If you go to shahannatali.com, you can find a free e-version of the book there. And what I am going to present today, or to at least inform you of, is my newest book coming out soon, which is called Mandate for World Peace, Defunding the Globalists. And what this book does is we're using the problem with hate and peace today is a lot of our conflicts are driven really by genocides. I mean, that's the conflicts that we see in the world, wars. They always have this component of genocide, because the genocides that I've documented, and in fact the Armenian genocide, it was not so much a religious conflict, rather it was an economic conflict. And the players, the people that were backing the young Turks and the Turks in general, manipulating the Turks, as we saw, you can say something, as Ankine said, you can say things and do things to dehumanize people. And she gave a recent example of what had gone on a few years back, where people were dehumanized, and it made it very easy for, calling people cockroaches and parasites and what have you. And that's what happened with the Armenians. The Armenians were, the Turks they had issues with the Armenians, of course. The Armenians were the people who were wealthy, and They were the people that were productive and so on. And of course there was jealousy. But there was jealousy between the Greeks and the Armenians, and the Jews and the Armenians, and the Azeris and the Armenians, and so on and so forth. It was an ongoing thing, and it was greed. And Betrayal of the Promise Never Kept covers that whole story, the real story of the Armenian genocide. But the newest book, Mandate for World Peace, Defunding the Globalists, is actually not just a book, but it's a movement. And what it does is it brings together anybody that's been a victim of genocide. And a victim of genocide, there are many, many. And Turks are even victims of genocide. And, you know, Azeris have been victims of genocides. And I'm not talking about the genocides they're alleging in Khojalu. I wasn't there. Oh, I was there and I wasn't there. It didn't happen the way they said. I've actually investigated that whole issue. And it's not quite what they're presenting. But again, like Ankine said, and Irena said, everybody has the version that they've been told and they're convinced is theirs. And it's a matter of educating people. But Mandate for World Peace, Defunding the Globalists, is focusing it uses the Armenian genocide as a case study for what genocides are and how, because it's so well documented. The documents that I have in Betrayal well document how it really works and how the globalists were pretty much behind the whole thing. They were the ones that were supporting the Young Turks. They were the ones that were arming them. They were the ones that were, you know, behind it, and they were the ones that were profiting from it. So 154 nations have entered into the United Nations into the Genocide Convention. It's the convention which is to prevent and punish. It's the prevention and punishment of the crime of genocides. And genocides have no statute of limitations. And within this agreement, Article 4 clearly states that the member states, which includes the United States, and includes Armenia, and includes Turkey, and it includes 154 nations who are obligated to pass legislation to prevent and punish the crime of genocide. Well, nobody's done that. Nobody's done that. They've signed into a contract. So Mandate for World Peace is a mandate that countries, those 154 countries, must pass legislation and make it accessible to victims of genocide to punish and to get reparations from not just the perpetrators, but those that support it, whether that's individuals. And it's very clearly spelled out in Article 4. It's there. It tells them what the legislation needs to be. So this book is not only going to educate people on what genocide really is, how it's carried out, how the globalists have been carrying it out, not just against the Armenians, but anywhere you see a genocide, their hands have, for the most part, 95% of the time, maybe even 99% of the time, the globalists have been there to profit and to support it for their gains. And when you're able to sue for reparations and you go after those that are responsible for it, you're going after the globalists. And you're going after their billions and trillions of dollars, and you're redistributing those through lawsuits, through sanctions, through assets being seized through this legislation, the way the laws are written, back to the people that it really belongs to, back to you and me and people, even Turks, even you know, whoever's been recognized by those countries where the legislation has, or those laws are in place, that is considered a genocide. And in the case of the Armenians, the United States government has officially recognized the Armenian genocide. All three branches of the United States government has recognized it. So Mandate for World Peace is that. It's coming out. There's going to be a minimum of 600 printed copies printed up, and every representative in Congress, the Senate, and the House of Representatives will be receiving this, along with a bill which I'm going to prepare for them that they can co-author. And as you also, people know or don't know, I'm actually a candidate for the 28th district, running against Adam Schiff, who is the incumbent of the 28th district. And this is part of what, if I happen to be elected, is something I'm going to be pushing for. If I am not elected into office, I'm still going to be pushing for this, because it's an obligation that the United States has signed into within the United Nations. So I'm just going to end it there. And you're gonna have to wait for the book to come out for those that want to read components of what are going to be in the Mandate for World Peace, especially in the book Betrayal, the Promise Never Kept. Look for the senatorial hearings that took place in 1919, where the Armenians present their entire case, and that document in itself spells out the Armenian genocide. It mentions the globalists by name and their involvement. It's actually in there, and people just didn't recognize them as globalists, but the likes of Jacob Schiff, J.P. Morgan, so on and so forth, the Rothschilds, they're all mentioned in there in this senatorial hearing. It's a legal document. It's found in the Library of Congress. People can get a copy of this. So that's something that we can do, which is peaceful. It's inclusive, not just of us and our cause, but it brings in all these different victims of genocide working towards the same cause, to end this type of violence, to end genocides, taking the profit out of genocides by making genocides, which they are illegal, but making it punishable, where there's a monetary component, that the monies that were stolen and the wealth that was stolen and passed down generational to one person to the other can be confiscated, can be seized. And this is how we can, as Armenians, as Turks, work together to get this through, because this is the law, this is the system, and we have to work within the system. It shouldn't be beating up people because that's the way you can get justice. I mean, we go back to Bedros. Bedros is in the security industry. He has a thing called Blackwater Security. They should be following the law, and he is promoting violence, which are illegal, which are actually hate crimes. He's promoting hate crimes, and he's saying, we didn't commit hate crimes, but you heard it with your own ears. He is, encouraging people to carry out hate crimes. So that's where I'm going to leave this off. It's going to be coming out very soon, and it's going to be a movement. We've already got support from other groups, non-Armenian groups, that want to promote this and to take this forward. So we're going to end this part of the program with that, and now we're going to make an announcement for a little project that's coming up. Then we're going to go to Q&A and then closing comments from the panelists. So I'm going to make the announcement, or Nanoor, if you would like to. It's really
I'm
up to
okay.
you.
I think you can start, and I will have something to add. I will add.
So on Saturday, this Saturday, which is July 30, no, I'm sorry, it's August 1st. August 1st at, Nanoor, what time did we decide? 2 p.m. 2 p.m. And we did get confirmation, by the way. We're just ironing out the details from, we're going to be doing a peaceful art project, a community art project. It's called Expressions of Peace. And we are going to be getting 2 very large canvases, which on the canvases will have a dove holding an olive branch.
Almost something like that.
Almost something like that. And we will be inviting members of the community, whether they're Armenians, whether they're Azeris, whether they're Chinese, whether, it doesn't matter. We're going to be inviting them down to Glendale City Hall. We're not sure what part of City Hall it will be. It'll be outside, to contribute to these 2 pieces of art. And these 2 pieces of art are going to be calling for peace. And one of the paintings will be presented to the Azerbaijani consulate in Los Angeles, and the other will be presented to the Armenian consulate in Los Angeles. And we will be marching on Sunday from Glendale City Hall to the Armenian consulate and to the Azerbaijani consulate, and we will walk and take this piece of art and deliver it to the doorstep and maybe even to the hands of the consulate. We're going to try to arrange that for both consulates to receive it.
Yes, exactly. I mean, the most important part, I think, is that this is not an Armenian project. This is just a project for peace, that we want everybody from any, country, any race, any belief attend. We're just going to be in the street. So whoever stops by and asks us questions, we're just going to explain and have them attend. And the other important piece is that we're going to actually walk all the way, and we're going to use that opportunity in between London and the Azerbaijanis consulate to get people's attention and to talk about peace to them. Obviously, due to this COVID situation, we're going to be very careful. We're going to have our masks on all the time. We're going to, have hand sanitizers available for the Saturday where people have to stand, come by and do this art project with us. But I really hope that you guys can also promote this if you believe in that, and we hopefully can get as many people as possible. I know that there is another protest going on Saturday, which I really hope that they can keep everything peaceful at the same time. But we're gonna just do this one and hoping that this will be a message of peace.
There you go. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to Q&A. Nanoor, can you moderate the Q&A?
Sure. Actually, because we were a small group, I know that some of you already typed there, but because it's not specified who do you want to address the question, can you please unmute yourself and ask the question if that's possible? I think that would be much easier. I know that Sev has some question.
Sev, would you like to ask your question?
Let me try. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hey, Sev.
I apologize for my English, but I'll try to ask a question in English. Ara, when you were describing all these the happenings, you used word protest, yes?
Yes.
So why we start to call our demonstrations about our solidarity to Armenia and Armenian cause, we call protest? Whom are we protesting? And who are we to protest, in name of, I don't know who. It's something, to call it, protest, it means that already something happened is here in Los Angeles or in America. Now we are protesting the government to, get attention. So I hope you understood
right
what I mean.
Sure. So just so we can give some clarity on the protest which I was involved in organizing, and why don't we mute Sev because his dog is barking?
I did.
Okay, there we go. So the protest that we organized on Monday the 20th that I attended, that I was involved with, our protest was against the threats of a very real military strike on the nuclear power plant in Armenia. It was a threat being made by the Azeri military, and they had actually moved into place some Israeli-made land-to-land, I guess, rockets that they had recently acquired, which are very accurate. Within 10 meters, they hit their target, So that was the protest that I was there for, was to call out on the Azerbaijani government and world leaders to warn the Azerbaijani government not to make such threats and not to carry out such a threat. And also part of my protest was to call on the OSCE, who in 1992, February of 1992, had put in place an arms embargo against Armenia and Azerbaijan. And there were countries, Russia, Israel, and even the United States, that were providing military aid, a lot of it lethal military aid, so it was arms, and most notably Israel, who had provided drones and those rockets that I mentioned that they put in Nakhichevan to strike or to carry out their threat, or to show that they're capable of carrying out their threat to hit a nuclear power plant. So to me, that was a world issue that had to be protested wherever, whether it's in Los Angeles or whether it's in Hong Kong. It doesn't matter, because nuclear strikes or strikes that would cause a nuclear disaster are something that we should all be concerned of. So that was my protest, and that was my reason. My protest wasn't so much of the Azerbaijanis attacked the Armenians. Yes, they attacked the Armenians, and the Armenians were very capable of taking care of themselves. So I wasn't so concerned about that. I was more concerned about the nuclear threat that was in place. So that was my protest.
Actually, yeah, I know that was your protest, but you know, in the context of that, other young people or people different backgrounds are making the peaceful protests, and it become violent. So actually, it's my question is continuation of the, you know, the guys were offering the how to use language in
By the way, Sev, շատ հանգիստ կարող եք հայերենով խոսել։
Եթե գուզես հայերենով խոսի,
Բոլորս հայերեն
չէ,
գիտենք։ That's not a problem.
Հա, հասկանալի է, որտեղ ոչ հայախոսներ կան։ Ես դրա համար փորձեցի անգլերեն։
Չէ, բոլորս հայերեն խոսում ենք խումբի մեջ։ It's okay.
It's fine, and we can translate it if need be.
Այսինքն իմ հարցը շարունակություն է մեր տիկնանց կողմից բարձրացված են հարցին, որ այս դեպքում բանը այն լեզուն, որը մենք օգտագործում ենք մեր մտքերը ու մեր ցանկությունները արտահայտելու, հիմնականում դառնում են բան, ոնց ասած, լոզունգներ, դառնում են տենց catchphrase-ներ, ուրիշները օգտագործում են դա իրենց ոնց որ ասած նպատակներով, ու ինչպես միշտ ցանկացած այդպեսի հավաքի կամ ցույցի ժամանակ լիքը պրովոկատորներ կան, ցածրիչներ կան, օգտվելով առիթից այդ ամեն ինչը վերածում են տուրուդումփոցի.
And I should add something. At our protest, when I arrived there on Monday, we had some people that actually came specifically for a confrontation with the Azerbaijanis, and they told me that. And I said, I don't know why you think we're going to have a confrontation. I said, the Azerbaijanis are not coming to this protest. I can tell you that the Azerbaijanis in Los Angeles, if they come, they're not coming to fight. That's not the Azerbaijanis, maybe of, you know, that are on the battlefield are for fighters. But the ones that are found in Los Angeles, at least the ones that I know or I know of, are educated. These are people that are going to come and they're going to use, and you saw they did. In fact, they showed up before the Tuesday protest, they showed up before that, and somebody posted, actually put a short video, we didn't show it, but she posted a video at 1:12 p.m. The protest didn't start until 2 o'clock. So why she was there an hour early at a protest where you're going to the Azerbaijan, it's one thing if you're going to the Armenian consulate and you're Armenian, but if you're an Armenian, you're going to the Azerbaijani consulate, you should not show up until the time of the protest because you're going to have a confrontation. And sure enough, they actually had a confrontation before the 2 o'clock protest that wasn't as violent as the second one that was triggered by a girl who goes around the block in her car when the Azerbaijanis are being escorted out and creates a situation where she gets hit allegedly. I didn't even see her get hit in the head. I'm not sure. She was screaming, I'm going to F your mother, I'm going to do all this kind of stuff. So she could have been making that up as far as I'm concerned. She's not a credible witness in my opinion. But then somebody says, hey, they hit the girl. I didn't see it. I was watching the video, and their car drives down the street at that time. So there were people that were trying to instigate violence from the Armenian side because that's what they felt they needed to do, apparently. And that's what their culture must be, I guess. I'm not sure. But I will tell you one thing. All of the protests that I've seen that involve the Armenian Revolutionary Federation that I've attended, that they've always been, I could say they've been an aggressive sounding thing, but I've never seen violence. I've never seen violence, and I don't believe, just like the gentleman said, those weren't part of our protest. he's probably right to a certain degree, because the guys that were involved in the beating up of the Azerbaijanis were definitely not ARF members. They were not, I don't think they were a part of that group that they were trying to bring together, but they were inviting everybody. So they even, in fact, had asked us to change our protest from Monday to Tuesday and join into their protest, and we said, no, we're not going to do that. We've already decided we have to do it on Monday, and you guys have your protest, and maybe there'll be a protest on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The more, the merrier. So this is a reality that, you know, the violence from the Armenian side, to a certain degree, was premeditated. They were looking for trouble on Monday, and I assured them, and these guys were big guys, they were there to fight, and I said, no, I said, it's not going to happen. The Azerbaijanis aren't going to come, and fortunately, they didn't come, and we actually ended our protest early intentionally, so we wouldn't have, because we were supposed to go until 1 or 2 o'clock, and we ended it around noon, 12:30. So we didn't have any violence, and that was something that we were aiming for, is no violence.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Are there any other questions?
I would like to ask you, this is Sophia here.
Hi, Sophia.
I love the idea of the peace banners that you're planning on presenting to the Armenian and the Azeri consulates. But I'm also wondering if there's any attempt, and I don't know how big the Azeri community is in Glendale, Los Angeles area, but to get people together to have a dialogue about, you know, the concept of dehumanization and set an agenda of certain topics that you want to present to people who want to engage in something that's peaceful and face each other, you know, and talk and make a conscious effort to remove the hate barrier. Is anything like that possible?
Yeah, well, of course, anything like that is possible. There are people that I happen to even have on Facebook, I believe, that are Azerbaijanis, but they are there. And I have a friend who has been actually involved, Oni Krikorian. He's out of the UK. He's been involved in projects where Azerbaijanis and Armenians get together in Georgia, and they have these conferences and these dialogues. Or a friend of Seven mine, Baha Vetyan, has also gone over and spoken actually at conferences in Azerbaijan. So there's been attempts made to try to bridge the gap that's there and the divide that's in place and like Irena said, not to talk about the Armenian genocide or atrocities or whatever, just to have a dialogue to say, we're human, you're human, you know, they think we're cockroaches, Armenians think, you know, some Armenians think they're cockroaches type thing. But what we are going to be doing is I'm going to be going through I'm actually going to go to the consulate site and find some people who are local, who are involved. There's a picture in our announcement. That's an Azerbaijani that says, don't teach your children to hate, teach love and peace. And those are the kind of people that we're going to at least try to approach and to invite to come to participate in the expression of peace paintings that we are going to do. And it's not, again, we're not there to discuss, you know, the Armenian genocide, land reparations, financial reparations. That's something that needs to be done in a court of law. That's not something that we should be arguing about. It really isn't, because the laws are there. We haven't lost our right to that. It's well documented what we have. It's well documented what maybe they have or they think they have. I don't know. I don't know what, you know, their state of mind. But I do know Turks and Azerbaijanis that know that it did happen, that know that the Armenians were wrong. And there are a lot of them. There are a lot of them. And those are the silent majority that don't speak. So it's what we're seeing, the ones that are very noisy are the version of like Bedros and other people like that on the Azerbaijani side that are very noisy and very, you know, the bellicose stuff and the anger and the so on and so forth. This is a legal issue at this point. Yes, something happened. Yes, they have been brainwashed or they've been taught a certain way. I can fault them, but I understand. You know, at the end of the day, there's a lot of Turks or quote unquote Turks in Turkey that are Armenians, and they're in hiding. I mean, there's a lot of components to this that really need to be dealt with very delicately. And listen, I come from a family that, you know, my grandfather, he was my mentor. He took the law that, or the sentence that was handed down to Talat Pasha and the Young Turks, and he carried it out. And he did that because it had to be done. And we're now at a stage where that had to be done. Talat Pasha was going to be the lead. You hear about the Illuminati, the globalists, the one world government, so on and so forth. That was Talat Pasha. He was being brought to power to rule over that region. He was being backed by the globalists for that reason. And my grandfather was able to recognize that. The Armenians, in fact, were making deals with Talat Pasha. The leadership at that time had jumped into bed with both feet with Talat Pasha. They were at a conference in Rome. It's in the book that I co-published. And so, you know, people make mistakes in their lives. They have to recognize that. People are informed of certain things, and they can be educated, and they can be shown the truth through evidence, through documents, through whatever is necessary. And those conflicts that exist can't be ironed out and say, hey, okay, something happened. Let's move on now. And you're entitled to your land, let's say, and if a court of law decides it's your land, it's your land. If we have to go to war and there's a military conflict, that goes on the battlefield. I will be the first one, if there's a need for me to go fight against somebody attacking Armenia, I will be on that battlefield to fight against that in Armenia, on our native lands, but not in the streets of Los Angeles. This is not the battlefield. This is not the place to do it. This is not the place. And any Armenian that brings the battle to a foreign land to fight other civilians that are not a part of that, and they're just like we are, but have the opposite opinion, is just wrong. That is a hate crime. That is a crime in another country. If they want to fight, against the Turks and the Azeris, if they're a threat to us, then let them go to Armenia. Let them enlist into the Armenian military. We have a very powerful military that's very capable. Let them be a part of that. No objections.
Can I ask one more question? Something that has occurred to me just moments ago is if we could, we here in this group could make a private Facebook group where it's private. It wouldn't be open to anybody else, just within our own group, and possibly invite other people who, may be interested. I think Diane left, and she's a good friend of mine, where we could continue this discussion. We could call it subjective peace. I kind of have an idea of how to set up a private group, but I would like to leave that to somebody else, because okay. I would like a list of the books that Ankine mentioned. I would love to, get sources from Nanoor about the behavior analysis. And there's just so much more that I would like to learn that we could share. And in other words, we could continue this without, the time frame of a Zoom and the technicalities and so on.
Sure.
And I talk to Irena all the time. Not talk to her, but have followed her travels and everything. So I can always communicate with her, but I like this little core group right here. I feel like I've made some good friends, and I want to continue that, and I want to learn some more.
I like that. We'll work on that, right, Nanoor?
Sure, of course. Actually, I wanted to add really quickly that definitely this first project that we're going to be doing this weekend, obviously is continuation of this discussion, but I'm almost sure, 100% sure that this is not going to be ending anytime soon, and that definitely will give us more opportunity for this kind of discussion. I also wanted to add that my master's is in clinical psychology, and I'm very involved with Armenian American Mental Health Association. I'm actually a board member now. And I was trying really hard to get a psychologist, to join us and tell us about some coping mechanism. Unfortunately, because this whole discussion come up really quickly, and they were all very busy these days, thanks to this whole situation of COVID-19. Unfortunately, they were very interested. There are so many Armenian psychologists that they're interested with this topic. If we have that Facebook page and the private group, I'm sure we will have more people there. They just couldn't make it today. So, but we'll definitely continue with additional projects like that, and we will continue our discussion on the Facebook.
That would be great. And let me just make a suggestion. I don't know if she'll be available, but my middle daughter is a clinical psychologist.
That's great.
And she works with coping mechanisms and
wonderful
many new systems. Maybe I could convince her to join.
Sure, definitely. I will definitely be in touch, and we can definitely talk about that. I also wanted to add something really quick. I know that Seb left, but I'm sure he will be able to hear this, the recording version of this. As he mentioned, in every protest, or whatever we call it, protest or gathering, there are some people who use some language to evoke some behavior. The whole concept of behavior analysis, and I was trying to make that point, is that it's up to us to either engage or not engage. And what we call it self-management is extremely important. We really need to have that strong self-management that ABA gives us, the ability of understanding that we need to use that self-management and not engage. And although I went to school for this, I have my master's and I have my board certification for this, but honestly, the first person who told me that you should not engage was Ara Manoogian when we first met in 2016. So that's basically also comes with that experience, because at some point I had we created a jail, and I was standing in front of Armenian consulate, and there were some people who attacked us, Armenians, unfortunately. And the first thing that Ara actually texted me when I was communicating with him, he said, just don't engage. And I end up not speaking a single word, and they just end up like just laughing and making some pictures, and they just walk away. But we never really engaged in any exchange. So that's the most important thing. We can't be responsible for other people's behavior, but we can definitely be responsible for our own behavior. And that's the whole concept of not getting engaged if your intention is a peaceful protest, okay? Also, we have to read, to me, freedom of speech is extremely important. As I mentioned, I was born in Iran, where there is no freedom of speech and freedom of thinking. So one of the strong motivations that pushed me to United States, to move to United States, was this concept of freedom of speech. So my point is that we really should be respectful to everyone's freedom of speech. If we want to have a peaceful protest and, make our point, Azeris, Turks, and every other individual in this planet can show up and make their point. They also have the freedom of speech. And we may not like it because we're so biased with all of that. We are so emotional about that. But in reality, we all have the same freedom of speech that we need to practice. Thank you.
I agree.
All right. So if there are no more questions, then what we'll do is a very quick round of
I know
closing
that
comments.
Irena wanted to ask something. Irena,
Sure, go ahead, Irena.
Yeah, I have a question. Two things. The Monday protest, if I'm not mistaken, there are like different videos, not the one you showed, but another part. Somebody who got up and spoke, you spoke and other people spoke. He asked the whole crowd to give their middle finger. I was like shocked. Who was that person? Anyway.
It was actually a prominent member of the community, and that was very uncalled for. Again, I didn't get to choose who. I was only involved. I was one of the organizers, and I went and I was allowed to do my protest, and they did open the mic up for anybody to talk, which is not always a good idea. But again, the freedom of speech issue, it's more along the line of when you have a protest, you have to. It comes with the territory. Sometimes you get some crazy up there.
Yeah, but we should bring this up. If he's one of the organizers, we should really address it.
Yeah.
We should address it to them, without, of course, getting angry or whatever. So that's one, one thing. I was totally shocked.
I'm actually going to add that one. I forgot about that. I will add that to the video when I do edit this, so we can see that.
Plan to have a talk with him. I would really like to. Yeah,
I can put you in touch with him. He's actually he's considered a prominent member of our community.
Oh, that's a shame. That's a shame.
I'd like to say a few words in English so they can hear us and everyone else in the world can hear us. Okay. We are Armenian, united forever!
Everybody, you hear this again? Remember a minute ago what we did? We gave them a sight hand signal. One more time, everybody. Azerbaijan. 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 Thank you very much.
But sign a charity. One more sign. One more sign. Sign.
I want to have a respectful.
Oh, come on. What respect are you talking about with savages?
Georgia. Respect Martin and
Այո, ուրան դե մարդ, ոչխարները respect չեն անում։
And then on the Tuesday protest, I know it was organized by AYF. They always think they do everything right and they do everything correct and organized. So apparently they didn't do their job right. So we can bring that up to them too.
Yeah, I think they know about that. They're being accused of hate crimes right now.
You know, for this thing that you guys planned, let's plan again and give more time, and let's invite people from the AYF.
Yeah, we're going to, this one, as far as the art project, we're going to move forward on Saturday. Whoever shows up, shows up. Again, it's going to be anybody. It's not just going to be Armenians. So we're going to, what's the most important thing is that we present the olive branch to both the Azerbaijanis and the Armenians as a collective community. That's the most important thing at this point.
Ara, could I just interject here? Am I still on?
Sure, you are. Yes.
Because I believe in the power of language, and I think that's been mentioned a couple of times. I think it would help to avoid that general term protest. It's a demonstration, and it's a demonstration of peace. And when announcements are made that announcing in advance that we're going to have a demonstration, that it's clear up front when people first hear this about the date and the time and the place, that they understand that this is a demonstration of peace and reconciliation, or whatever, a whole list of synonyms that you might add to that. So just to eliminate the word, just erase the word protest, because that's what I kept saying. One of the questions I had is when you're having a protest, like the Black Lives Matter and the death of George Floyd, that's a protest because that was an incident. But a lot of people don't understand, as you mentioned, or somebody mentioned, that the young people don't understand the conflict between the Armenians and the Azeris. They don't even know that history. They're too young, or they have been fed misinformation.
Sadly, some of the older people don't know it either. Sadly,
that's true. That's true. I have 5 siblings who don't have a clue, and I protest 6 times for all of us.
Right. Okay, so we're going to go one round, 30 seconds, closing comment from the panelists, and we're going to end this tonight.
Oh, great.
Who wants to start? Irena, you want to start? 30 seconds.
Okay, well, I think this was great, but we should plan another one and a bigger one to get more participants. And let's work on a Facebook group, as Sophia said, and let's invite some Azeris in that Facebook group.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Irena, for presenting, and thank you for your comments. Vem, what do you got to say?
I guess it's more of a question, like, how do you influence like big groups of people to having a certain kind of discipline and protocols so stuff like this doesn't happen anymore? How do you do that? And I don't know. I was just thinking as you guys were talking, I think even trying to influence Armenian television stations, like to just have like a 30-second infomercial on the protocols of protest, what looks good, what looks bad. Maybe people have this kind of hard time of separating themselves from the event, seeing how ugly something looks and how bad it makes the race and the community look. So I think it's a serious topic, and I think it's something that, all the different factions of Armenians should be looking at, of how do you teach the community to like really discourage stuff like this, and when stuff like this happens by some offending parties, making sure you have enough people to stop it before it gets out of hand, and making that part of that discipline a part of this idea of, protesting, being out there, fighting for a cause.
Wonderful. Thank you, Vem. Ankine? You got to
You're
unmute yourself.
muted. Okay. Hold on, I'm fixing it.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm just so happy to be with a group of people who think the way you guys think. I didn't know there were Armenians who think this way, because I think this way, but I didn't know that you existed. So I'm very, very glad about that. I'm thinking about what possible ways we can create media that creates peace, you know, whether it's putting people on the table together in Azeri and Armenian and having them dialogue and videotape it, put it on YouTube, or you know, put the audio on somewhere else and have a podcast that's just based on that. There are so many ideas, and I'll keep thinking about that. And meanwhile, I'm planning a show, which I've been very conflicted about. How do I present this issue to the non-Armenians? I'm putting a panel together, and I am kind of stuck. So, any thoughts?
I have to think about that. You let us know how we can help also.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're always there for you. And Nanoor?
I'm just very grateful for everybody who presented and attended. It started with a crazy thought that Ara and I had, and we were just, I mean, we couldn't, you know, we're just literally losing sleep over this aggression and violence. And I'm very grateful that, you know, we were able to do at least this first step. And I really hope that we can do more of similar activities, actions to promote peace, love, and light. That always been my intention in every, you know, human rights activism that I attended. And thank you so much for being with us tonight.
And I echo what Nanoor said word for word, and encourage everybody to, once we get this posted, I'm going to be editing this in the next couple of days. We're going to get it posted on YouTube. Please share it far and wide, and let's get this movement going. And also invite your friends on Saturday at 2 o'clock to participate in Expressions for Peace. We have to offer the olive branch to everybody. Thank you again for attending, and good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.